Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As you can see, I'm in the process of I need my space, being locked and not willing to see anybody. Thank you to those who gave me this t-shirt last time. I'm still painting and pardon. Sorry, I have a phone that I don't know how to use and I don't know how to turn it off. So I was just saying that I am in this kind of still in my inner world painting, so a bit everywhere. Let's go to the topic for today. The topic for today is perish. So the word perish comes from the Latin perire, that comes from two words. One, per, meaning towards an end, and the other one meaning to go. So perish comes from perire, meaning towards an end, and the last one, to go. So to go towards an end. So perish is a word that usually we don't use much in the daily days. We don't use much this word because we usually to die or to, how to say, to get rotten. Yeah, to get rotten, something like fruit or whatever. I don't know if in English you use the concept of perish food or not perish food. I never said it in English. Perishables, you say? Thank you. Perishable foods. So in Spanish we use it most for that, but usually is a word used in literature, in poetry, which is more classy to explain death. So the idea of perish is not exactly like to die or something that is dying. Is a concept that kind of explains the idea of something that is moving towards an end. So it's not speaking about the action of dying, it's basically something that is heading to a situation of ending. So it's not the same as die or end. So this is why I think that it's important to think about this topic, making a difference with death. So the reason why we are going to speak about this is because of some questions that emerged from yesterday, which is related to the creation. We spoke about the being that is creating, that the mind that is growing up through expanding and creating things in the universe. But suddenly we can find a question of so why this mind is willing to create and manifest and play would allow the destruction of things in the universe, why it would allow wars, conflicts, destroying in the universe, death. So this is why we are going to try to understand what it means for the universe to destroy and to perish. I would love to do like synoptic organization, because I love to do this in school. So it's funny that sometimes I hear those who know the interdimensional words and so on, and what I'm really concerned about is to make a beautiful synoptic frame. So this is the frame, and then you have the summary, so I can explain it later if you want to write it down. So let's go to this summary of the universe. First of all, remember, everything begins because one unity decides to expand to come back to itself. Universe. So this unity here takes two different paths, one inside, one outside, which is D, D meaning two. So diverse. Diverse is the origin for two paths that goes out to come back within. Those two paths are called negative and positive. So this positive and negative, they will start to create everything, dividing by two different paths that we call constants, because they happen all the time, constantly. Because of this, these two constants will be called time and space. These two constants then are like lines that are always there that linked one to another by positive and negative. So the line of time and the line of space, they find together in the center, positive and negative, and they create energy. This energy will be the movement of positive and negative, making the two lines crossing, creating wave. The waves are the ones that will unify time and space in positive and negative. In English, onda is wave. So here we have the wave that connects time and space. So once that we have this time and space and they start to connect to one another, multiplying, they start to be divided, because diversity, they diverse. The diversity make the lines of and lines of space, they start to multiply by themselves. So that creates many lines of time, many lines of space, realities, and they start to cross one another, creating different waves, different vibrations in the different waves. So when they start to cross to one another, they create these tiny dots where all the vibration get together, creating energy. So the crosses of line and space creates a network. And this network, which is many waves connecting one another, what they do is to create nodes. And those nodes are the waves so densified by energy that become a particle. So time and space bending once and again, they made a wave into a particle. So we can have here lines of space and lines of time. So here, in between time and space, we have waves that they cross, creating nodes. And the nodes are basically the crosses of the waves. So the particles are born because of the wave. They are the same in a different organization. Por lo tanto, son diferentes organizaciones de la misma cosa. So this network, what happened is that it starts to create itself through fractalization, fractals. The particles create the fractals with the waves. Because as you hear, the patterns of time and space with the particles, they create one structure that repeats itself again and repeats itself again, going out and inside, big and small. So that's the fractalization. So what happened with this structure that makes order? It organizes the reality and makes rest the mind because it's in order, is organized. It's a perfect pattern, all organized. So this means that the universe, through all this process, discovers the cosmos. So let's try to see if I can really draw it here. So imagine that this network is something that keeps going, expanding in every direction. So there are moments that the lines of time and space, they start to curve themselves because they want to come back to the origin, to the center. Can you see it? Can you see the shape that I'm trying to do? It's like if all the lines from the origin starts to curve themselves, coming back to the center. So what happened here? That in each here appears a new origin. So from it starts to emerge new lines of time and space. This is what we call multidimensionality. Because remember, this is a fractal. So in each node emerges new networks. So what happened here is that eventually, when these two different lines get over one to another, what happens here is a superposition of lines. So what happened here is that a line of space is superposed over another line of space, or a line of time over another line of time. So they start to create a superposition of things that they shouldn't be one over the other. So what happened here? That if this is time and this is time and they cross together, the normal path of it would be to this, to keep going like this in the expansion, to follow the path. But because time and time are negative and negative, they repel one to another. So when you have time and space is like positive and negative. So the magnetism, they attach because positive and negative, they attract like a magnet. But when you get time and time or space and space, you have positive and positive or negative and negative. So what happened is that they repulse each other like a magnet. And what happens from that is that it turns, it makes a torsion to itself. It torsions itself in order to not to follow the same path, so it doesn't find the same times. It tries to create a new path. So it torsions itself, that we call something that we are calling distortion. Distortion. So why this is happening? In the fractalization of the universe, it is so much expansion that eventually they start to come back to themselves, expanding and going and colliding to one another. The image that we can have, for example, is like if my hand is going out of the body, and it expands so much throughout the entire universe that it starts to bend itself, because everything is following the pattern of light, which is like spiral. So it moves and turns back again. So it turns back and comes back, and eventually my fingers will go to my nose because of the expansion of the fractalization. Imagine so many hands going everywhere that eventually they won't have a space. So they will start to hit back to the structures from where it came from. And that's why, for example, that comes to the nose, and I have a problem, my hand going to the nose not willing to let the hand go inside, so they start to have pain and hurt and so on. Okay, so that would be the image that we have with this. So a human example can maybe be like humans reproducing so much in the world that as much humans we have, much conflicts will get. And this will be like, for example, when there were less humans in the world, we didn't have as much as conflict as we do today, because because when we started to reproduce and have more and more and more, eventually we didn't have space. So that's why they started to pressure one another, and when they found in the same territory, they hit and they start to fight because of that territory. This is how we get how humans start. Before we didn't have countries, we just have regions. So these regions start to have much population, so they had to grow, and this growing of population made to create a country. And the country, suddenly they found in the opposite side, and they start to fight for the limitations. They created boundaries. So these boundaries were to protect what they have in one side, but the other ones wants to also expand. So as much population, they start to have war for the territory and so on. So this is like the fractalization of something. It creates this conflict. So of course that we can say that this concept of wars and to fight for the territory could be silly from the human point of view, but this is not something that is human. This is everywhere. This is a fractal of the universe. For example, the grass. When we look at the grass, we may say, oh, it's so beautiful, these meadows and this beautiful garden. But what actually is happening there is a war. The grass is fighting a war territory. We see grass everywhere because they kill everything that can grow. So they go over the other ones, expanding as a fractalization in order to take control of the territory. So when we see something that is beauty and green, what really is happening is the grass fighting a war. And this is happening not because we have a lot of space, it's because the space is one. Space is bending constantly, and that's eternity. It's constantly bending once and again, once and again. It's like if you have this room and everything inside this room starts to do itself by two, once and again, once and again. Eventually, the whole space will be filled and nothing could fit this space. But because space is eternal, it can constantly divide once and again, once and again. So as you see here, this is perfect organization. This is cosmos. And here you can see is a mess because it's open. It's not a closed system. It's open, and it starts to open once and again, once and again. And by this opening, constant opening, we get chaos. Chaos comes from the Indo-European language "gie," that means to yawn. Yawning. Why? Because yawning is to open very much something, the mouth. Okay, so this is chaos. So it's like taking this and cutting so the network is open. If everything would be in perfect order like this, nothing would exist. Because perfect order means that nothing really is divided. There is no originality. So this is a network that is constantly the same. You get cosmos, you get order, but it's always the same. In order to exist, for us to exist, for a human to exist, a person to exist, the camera to exist, the air to exist, we need for this to break. We need chaos in order to exist. So now here we can understand this, that without chaos, we wouldn't be able to exist. Because remember, existing means to go out from somewhere. And the only way you can exist is if you get out from this pattern to create your own, going away from this pattern. This is why distortion, chaos, is the thing that helps us to exist. Chaos is the thing that took us to diversity. So everything in the universe is destined to go from cosmos to chaos. Because chaos is the only way to set ourselves free from patterns. So here we have this thing that patterns are order. Because order is basically that you feel comfortable with something that repeats once and again. So nobody wants to change the patterns because it makes people feel comfortable. But when you want to change, you need to break the pattern to create something new, to change your life. And for sure, it happened to you that when you wanted to change the patterns of your life, you brought your life into chaos. And you live a time of chaos in your life. Didn't you? Chaos is a synonym of evolution. Cosmos is a synonym of stability. Cosmos, order, can also be horrible. For example, the people that get in relationships that their partners hit them, kick them, do bad stuff to them. And they repeat it once and again, once and again. Why? Because the brain interprets that that's the way it should be. It's a pattern they have to follow. So this is why if I want to change that pattern, I have to break with this pattern, understand first why this pattern came from. And from there, I change it from a different point of view. I switch it. Bringing chaos in my life, of course, because it's different from before. But that brings me to evolution. Everything in the universe goes through this process. So everything in the reality goes through this process. And we call this process life and death. Life and death. So what do we have in between? We have the path from life to death, from cosmos to chaos. And that's what we call to perish. That's why in the past they used to tell us, welcome to life, the path towards death. Because we could understand in that time that going to death, chaos, is nothing else but a way in which the body, the reality, distorted itself through evolution. Nothing really dies in the universe. What really happens is that evolves. So to perish is a path of evolution, but we see that as a defeat. We are so much attached to the idea of the patterns of the cosmos, of life and existence, that we are afraid of change in chaos and evolution. We think that death is like the ones that defeat life, when in reality, death is the one that gives meaning to life. This is a constant of transformation. This is why death takes us to another way of organization. It transforms ourselves in a different pattern, what we call to rebirth, reincarnation. So to recognize that we live our lives perishing, that we are heading to chaos, to death, helps us to set ourselves free from the shapes, from the forms, acknowledging that all what we do is in order to transform ourselves in something new, something different. And what is this all about? To keep transpassing data, information, energy, constantly, once and again, evolving into different ways, better ways, in which we can exchange that information. So what this makes to us, to acknowledge what is to perish, helps us to keep going, acknowledging that all the things that we love, all the things that we believe and we want for them to exist are not forever. That we must embrace the idea that they will transform themselves. So we cannot get stuck in one of them because they will be transformed. And if that transformation is not done by ourselves, the universe will get in charge of doing it. So the task for today is to think about what is the thing that we cannot get rid of, or the thing that the thing that we don't want to get rid of, the thing that we don't want to leave behind, and find a place to do like kind of a ceremony where you just or paint or do or write something that you don't want to change, and you just break it and disarm it and leave it away. In knees chakra. So some people were someone was asking about death. So you can check about death in November. I spoke about death in November. So the task for today, for example, as an example, I don't know, each one can find its own way, but imagine, I don't know, like drawing something that you love the most and you really like, and you don't want to get rid of this, and put fire on it, set fire, and burn it and to ashes. That's it. Let's go to the information for today. The vibration for today is who. The statement for today is, I am the designer of paths.